Welcome to Workshop Wednesday. It's getting started. We're doing a little getting started topic today. It's all about Google Data Studio and getting started, of course, with Google Data Studio. So if you've ever wondered how to use this tool to create really cool dashboards, I think you're going to actually love today. All right, before we get too far into it, of course, my name is Chris Mercer. I do go by Mercer, and I'm the co-founder here at measurementmarketing.io, where you can find our content on such incredible platforms like Digital Marketer, Conversion Excel, Social Media Examiner, and of course, the courses that we have over at measurementmarketing.io. What do we do here? Well, we actually help marketers, marketing teams, and agencies know their numbers and grow their numbers. And we do that by helping people just like you learn how to use all these tools that are out there that are incredible and that, dare I say it, are free. Tools like Analytics, Tag Manager, Data Studio, Facebook Analytics, and others. So now how do we do this? We actually do this through the Measurement Marketing Framework. So I'm going to bring this up. And this really is 5 key things. And the reason that we talk about this is because it helps put this training in context. So we talk about planning, which is figuring out which questions that we actually want to get answers to, what information we're going to need to get those answers, and ultimately what actions we'll take based on those answers. Then there's the build out where you actually measure everything using things like Tag Manager and Analytics, and then reports. You actually start designing dashboards that answer those questions, and that is where Data Studio comes in. So it'll be in this reporting phase. Now, once you have the dashboards, once you have your benchmarks, then you can begin to forecast your results, and that's ultimately what you're going to measure against, right? You're going to measure against your forecast. That will tell you where you need to optimize. That's the whole measurement marketing framework in a nutshell. And specifically, again, this training, this workshop is really dead set in that reporting step. Now, with all of these workshops, the goal is for you to pick up one new thing, one new concept, one new skill, one new way of looking at something. That's all it takes, because it is really, really easy to get overwhelmed and frustrated by these tools because there's a lot that they can do. And it's tough to be an expert in all things. So don't try to be. Just pick up one new thing, take that skill, practice it. Then you rewatch this workshop, pick up another skill. Every time you watch this workshop, you will see it with a fresh pair of eyes and you'll pick up something else, I promise. So that one thing concept is what we want to do to make sure that you integrate and actually get these skills. All right, let's go ahead and get started, shall we? Getting started. Google Data Studio 101. Getting started with Google Data Studio. Now, typically, I just sort of jump in and we get right to it, but guess what? We actually have a guest instructor. We've got Julie Brade from our team. She's our lead instructor here at measurementmarketing.io, and she's actually been quietly behind the scenes teaching our high-end coaching clients, our private guided training clients, since 2017. So she's been back there always kind of doing this stuff. She handles it for our team, for anything that we need from a measurement perspective. Julie's back there doing. And she's also an account manager for our dedicated measurement management clients. That's kind of the done-for-you setups that we will do. So she's an absolute rock star, specifically with Data Studio. And honestly, this is the point where, sometimes when we have instructors, not sometimes, all the times when we have an instructor that's coming in that's not me, it's because they are just simply better at the particular tool. And that is absolutely Julie when it comes to Data Studio in this case. I know Data Studio, but Julie is a rock star at Data Studio. So Julie, are you there?
I am here.
Outstanding. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you, and then I'll have you kind of go through the basics of Google Data Studio. Sound like a plan?
That sounds perfect.
All right. Let's go for it.
Cool. Well, before we jump into anything, I do have a confession to make that I actually came to Data Studio kicking and screaming because I did not want to leave my spreadsheets. Like, I loved my spreadsheets, or any other way that I got my data, like digging into analytics, diving in 5 different steps to get to the information that I needed. I didn't want to do Data Studio, but through some encouragement from Mercer, he really encouraged me to try it out. And once I actually started using the tool and trying to get my answers from Data Studio, I was blind, but now I see. It was like that. It was just a crazy moment. I was like, oh my gosh, this makes my life so much easier. So if you are intimidated by it or don't want to leave your spreadsheets, I really encourage you to at least try it. So with that confession out of the way, I want to start with the template. So when you come into datastudio.google.com, you're going to have this section up at the top that has all these templates. And while we don't encourage people to just take any template that you see, it does do a really good job of showing you what Data Studio is actually capable of and kind of inspiring for a dashboard that you will create. So we do have the very first one here is a tutorial report. So it's actually really good. So you can see all the different type of elements and possibly some of the navigating steps and just like little shortcuts. So if you haven't already taken a peek at that one, spend 5-10 minutes running through that. You might find something that you didn't already know. But I'm going to keep our training based on more of the reporting and not necessarily so much of how to navigate so much through it. So, all right, as you can see here, we have a different options in our template. You can see Google Analytics, the Search Console, YouTube Analytics. And I'm going to kind of pop through these. I already have my tabs open for them. I just want you to see what Google Data Studio is capable of. And we'll kind of walk back through some of the examples here in a moment. So the very first one is just a simple spreadsheet of it's getting information, it's displaying information from a spreadsheet. So again, charts in bars, different ways of displaying the information so it's easier to read, just kind of keeping those things in your mindset. All right, and then we have something from from Google Analytics, and again, just different ways of displaying the information so it's easier to read, easier to digest or understand what is going on, so you can have the actionable answers, so you can take action and actually improve and forecast as well. And then we come into a couple of other types of reports, again just showing you what Data Studio is capable of and hopefully going to inspire you to build a dashboard for yourself as well. So again, just coming through showing you all the different types of reports. And here's another fun one, probably what most of you guys want to do is have your ad spend and your actual sales in the same report. So there we go. All right, so now that we've kind of gone through some of the templates, I want to jump straight into a blank report. And this way, we're actually going to see what happens when we go through a blank report. So the very first thing it's going to ask you to do is connect to a data source. And so we have our report, and then we have a data source. And you have multiple data sources per report. And I know that sounds a little bit confusing, but it'll make more sense in just a moment. All right, so you see these right here. Those are actually ours. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look for a sample, anything sample in here that Google gives us. The other ones were actually, for our analytics, and I don't want to use that today. So it says you're about to add the data source to this report, and I'm saying yes, I want to add that to my report. All right, now that thing goes away. So now we're connected into that data source and we are ready to start from scratch. But before I do, I want to point out a couple of main sections that you probably use the absolute most. The first part is add a chart, and this is all of the different chart options that you were seeing. So as we went through all of our examples, our templates, this is what they were using to display the data. All right, then we have these different types of filters. We can change it with a date. We can have another filter for anything else that we want to filter by, like our traffic sources. And here's another one, a data control. Like, so if you are a freelancer and you want to have a master report for every client, you can actually flip through different views and from Google Analytics or different data sources for that. All right, and then finally our last section over here is more of the formatting and making things pretty. And majority of the templates that I just showed you, the ooh and all elements that were made things really cool was actually mostly of these little tools here, the circles, the squares, and the images and stuff. It really enhances the charts to make it easier to read. And I'll kind of show you how we do that. All right, so we are actually going to just jump in and start with a table chart. And we're going to see what happens with it. So it's connecting into our data source from Google Analytics, our sample data. So when we say we have a data source here, this is what is grabbing information from. And so the default, it looked for the medium. So if you're familiar with tagging your traffic, you're familiar with source and medium, and it's saying this is the medium, and here's our sessions for that information. So what if I wanted to get the user information for this as well? Well, that's really easy to do. There's a couple of different ways I can do that. I can say I want to see users as well. And so that I go find the right metric. And so this tool, you do better with this tool with Google Data Studio if you have a really good understanding of the information that you're looking for. Like if you weren't quite sure what Google Analytics called users, then you would want to educate yourself on exactly what metrics that you're going to want to pull, so it's a little bit easier for you. But if you have a really good understanding of the information that you want to grab, then this will go really smoothly for you. So now that we have our dimension, which are our medium, and our metrics, I want to walk through quickly through these different sections that we have here now that you kind of see them in the works. And again, this is a really high level overview. Just want to get you the basics, but I definitely encourage you to come in here and play with it and try to find all these different little shortcuts and stuff that makes this tool even better and easier to use. So again, we have our data source. We have a dimension. So the way I like to teach it, metric versus dimension. A metric is something that you can do math with. So add, subtract, divide, multiply. You can do math with that. And dimension is everything you cannot do math with. So that's how I like to remember. So if I wanted to look for the source, like as in for source medium, I know I would not find it under metric. I know I would need to look for it under dimensions. And Google does do a great job of color coding it. And so that makes it a little bit easier to find them as well. So we have our dimensions, we have our metrics of what we want to see. We have some other basic ways of displaying the data. So rows per page, that's pretty straightforward. Do we want a summary row? Perhaps if we're looking at revenue, we would want to see a summary row. And so again, very straightforward exactly what the information is doing. If we wanted to change what we're sorting by, this is where we can say, no, I want to sort by the users. Again, pretty straightforward. This is why I want you to get in here and play with this, because I think once you get in here and decide exactly what information you want to see and play with how you want to see it, it'll make a whole lot more sense. It'll be really fun for you guys to get in here. All right, now I want to show you a little bit more. So as you saw me pressing these little plus buttons and changing everything over here, the other way that you can do it, the not so fun way, is actually scrolling through. As you see that I'm over here, I'm using my scroll on my mouse, and this one's not so fun. So technically, you absolutely can do it this way. Or you can type it in right here. So there's 3 different ways that you can find the information that you want to add it here. So, all right, now we have a table that is connected into Google Analytics data. How about we actually connect into a data source that is your own data source? How would we do that? Well, what we are going to do, there's a couple different ways we can do that. I could just press the X, I can hover over it. It's going to let me hover over it. Well, I'm going to get rid of it. Guess it's not going to let me get rid of that one just now. It's probably because it's not my data source. That's the reason why. I don't own that data source. It's not going to let me do that. So I'm going to go to Manage Added Data Sources, and I'm going to add a data source. And this is where you see all of the different connectors here that Google Data Studio has access to. Obviously, the ones at the top are mainly all the Google ones. And then you can see that there's quite a few down below. And these are constantly being updated. And as with anything, if there's something that's already built in to make your life easier, we absolutely recommend you using that built-in, because it really does make the transfer of information much faster and better. So for Google Analytics, we're going to connect right into it. We're going to just follow the different prompts. So we're going to connect into measurementmarketing.io. I know which property I want to jump into, and I know which view I want to test or get into. So it's test training, and then I'm going to connect. And there we go. It's going to list everything that Google Analytics has. So if I was connecting into a spreadsheet, it would list all of everything that was in the header, and it would kind of give a guess of what that information is. And if you needed to adjust it, you could do it here. Otherwise, we're going to say add to report. And we're going to say, yes, I'm really sure I do want to add it to the report. All right. And so now we are going to change our data source to that test training. There we go. Now we're there. Perfect. Okay. So now we are not looking at the sample data anymore. Now we're looking at test training. And see, now that I have that X, that's because it's my data source. The sample data source is actually owned by Google. And so obviously they're not going to let me edit their data source for everyone to see my edits from. So this is now looking at our data source. So if I wanted to see anything else, I'm a really big fan of pie charts. And I know a lot of our clients are a fan of pie charts just because it's fun seeing the data in a different way. And also for me, you don't have to think about it. And so one of my favorite ways of showing this information is a device category, which is how Google calls our desktop, mobile, and tablets. So,
And what you're doing right there, just to backtrack real quick. So you just
mm-hmm,
searched for available fields, looked
mm-hmm,
up device category, drag and dropped it into the dimension, and that's what created that. That's what switched, and then the pie chart switched.
correct,
Okay, perfect.
exactly. So it really is, and we're going to show that a little bit slower. We're going to try a bar chart and show that a little bit slower. And here we go. So right now, by default, it's going to pull the source media. I uh, perhaps I don't know what I want to see. Let's say we're going to go by age. So I don't know what it's called. I'm going to call it age. I want to look it up. That's going to pull it to the top if it wasn't already close to the top. And I'm grabbing and I'm dropping. So there you go. That is exactly how you could do that. So now we have our bar chart by our age groups sorted with page views. Again, we can always change that metric to users. And again, searching for it, drag and drop for that part. And one pro tip that, and Mercer has mentioned before, that you want to make sure you're creating your dashboards that are giving you answers that you can take action on. And a really big pro tip that we like to give out is that you want to make sure that if the report is for your executives or your C levels, that it's giving them the answers that they need, and the report that's for anyone else below, the rest of the team, it's giving the answers that they need. So it's okay if you have a summary report and then a report that has conversion rates for all the other different steps of the funnel. And we actually encourage that to make sure that your reports are providing answers to whoever is going to get the report. And also, another bonus pro tip for you is I like to think to myself is if someone who is not familiar with the dashboard, could they understand the information that's on the dashboard with 30 to 60 seconds of looking at it? If it's going to take them several minutes to understand the information, then there's a lot of improvement that could be made and to help the user digest the information. And I'm going to jump back to our template to kind of guide you through what I'm talking about with that part. So we're back at our Google Analytics template, and we see here the subject, or they're actually saying, how are site sessions trending? So if you have someone who's asking that question, they know they're going to have this answer here. Then we have another question. So what are the top countries by the session? Which channels are driving engagement? And so this is a really great way to identify what questions and giving them the answers so they don't have to really scan around and try to understand what is this map showing me. And again, that's just really simply just using these tools right here that are going to guide us to give us those answers. So I can say, I'm going to make a little text box here, and we're going to do exactly what they did. We're going to maybe format it a little bit bigger so we're actually going to see the letters. What devices are my users on? Maybe that's not the best way to phrase it, but it gives you an idea of how very easily you could guide the end user of the report to get the information that they're looking for. What devices are my users on? And then obviously we're going to have a little pie chart here that's going to guide them.
And just to bring this in perspective too, from the measurement marketing, we talk about the 5 pillars, and we've got the planning, building, reporting, forecasting, and optimizing. So when we're building these dashboards out, it's not just information for information's sake, kind of to what Julie was saying earlier. It's okay. Here are the devices my users are currently using to access whatever the thing is that you're measuring. In this case, is just the site. But before you create a report that does this, there should have already been a conversation in the planning stage of, okay, if I give you a report, like how would you use that? Like so that you can take what action, right? So if it's just information, if this just provided information, it wouldn't be useful and I wouldn't actually have it as part of my dashboard. But if I said, well, I need to know the user devices because we're sending traffic from Facebook and we're targeting mobile devices. And I want to make sure that of the people, I want to be able to track and see, okay, is it mostly mobile devices that are coming through? Because if this report shows what it does now, which is that 90% of my traffic is desktop, then I know something's off. Right? I know something's off and I know the actions I need to go take with Facebook, which is, okay, I got to go target my Facebook campaign. So that's just an example of, this is not, you never want to create a dashboard for just information's sake. And that's what you want to do. Like that's the inclination. That's your intuition. That's what everybody else does with dashboards. We don't do that here. So as a measurement marketer, your job is to answer very specific questions that lead already to an action. If you're creating a dashboard and you don't know what the action is, then you got to go back and work with your stakeholder, work with your boss, work with your team, or just think to yourself and say, okay, what action? Like, so what? Yeah, it's useful to know devices, but for what purpose? If you cannot tie it down to an actual action you're going to take, don't even bother putting it on a dashboard because it just becomes trivia at that point.
That's a great point. Thank you very much for that, Mercer. And another fun bonus tip, the way that we started doing reports on our team, and Mercer doesn't even know this, is going to be fun for him to know. Sarah and I, when we go through and we start talking about what our dashboards are going to have on them, this is what we are doing. I come through and I come on the dashboard. I have a little text box and I ask the question. And so she knows what answers she needs to put on that page. What is the conversion rate for XYZ funnel? And then I'll give her the other metrics. Like I want to know the landing page and the card. I give her all these things like what I need to know in a question format. So she knows exactly what answers I need to be able to have at my fingertips. And I give her, I want to know it by this filter or whatever other information. So as we're building these dashboards, we're not going to clutter it with the extra info that might be distracting. Like, yes, the maps are really pretty, and yes, the pie charts and the bar charts are really pretty, but if they're not going to be useful in guiding those decisions, what you want to optimize and forecast, then they probably don't belong on there. So it's just really easy once we start building out these reports. When we started doing it this way, the reporting got a lot faster as we're going through and building stuff. So that was a fun fact for you, Mercer. All right. So I am actually going to jump back into one of these reports because I know some of you might really think that these are really neat, the way they're displaying this information. This is where we're coming to make the information easier to digest and
And
understand.
actually, Julie, before we dive into how they did it here, how would you do it on yours? Like, can you just show us like some ways, like make it the measuremarketing.io colors, like that sort of stuff with the existing dashboard? And I realize like this isn't a real dashboard; it's just sort of playing around showing these things. But at this point,
Absolutely.
everyone knows sort of where the things are. It's like, hey, pick your chart, pick your format. There's just a drop down. It's not that complicated, but that's only part of the battle. And I know my tendency is to create ugly looking dashboards, to be honest. I'm because I'm just more oriented like you are to spreadsheets. But what tips do you have in terms of design and how to use these design elements? And then
Absolutely.
once we have that, I would like to see like, okay, what about date ranges and that sort of stuff? Like just sticking with this
For
one, and then
sure.
we can dive into the other ones.
Absolutely, for sure. So the fun thing to do with these charts, and the actual thing that I think most of the clients just goo and ga over, is by making it the branded image and the branded colors. And the way I do it, I want to just jump straight in and show you how I do it. Is I go to the site and I get the color. I happen to use a add-on. I'm actually going to have to pull up over into my not incognito because that tool's not available in not incognito. But I basically go through and I get the branded color from, like, there's something like Adobe Color Wheel, and I can come through and I'm going to show. So right now we're looking at our pie chart, and I'm going to go into the style section of our pie chart.
And
And
just
as you,
just to recap what probably just happened, so you basically use like a color picker extension or something like that. There's lots of free extensions out there,
yeah,
and then you
I'll just,
hover over the client's logo. So if you go back to ours, just showing our
I'm
logo
actually
that
going
you
to
were
pull it up
loading.
right here.
Yeah,
Yes, it's pulling up right here. Okay,
perfect. Yeah.
so here we do. I can actually save this image as whatever I want it to be. And then I use this one right here. This was the one that I found. There's also Adobe Color Wheel and all that other fun stuff
And
that
what
you
is
can.
that one?
This one, if I get it to, it's Color Picker Eyedropper. That's the
Cool.
one that I color pick eyedropper. Just a free Chrome extension. And so I hover over any of these colors and I'm going to click on it, and it's going to give us this color right here. Who knows if that's actually the color brand, but it matches the website. And so when I come through, actually bar chart's a little bit easier than a pie chart. So you see here we have this color. So what I want to do is I want to come in and say I want the color to be this. And so we
Now
start.
walk us through again. How did you get there? Because I was just looking at data and dimensions and metrics, and all of a sudden I'm in color.
Sure, absolutely. So we were in data. This is where we, change whatever we want to be looking at. And then we came over to style. So I was a little bit fast on that. And so style is where you can decide where, if you want to view your data in a different way, if you want different bars, if you want to change your access or anything like that. Again, depending on what kind of information you want to show, using and utilizing the different options you have here can make your information much easier to digest and much easier for the end user to view.
Okay, so this is where you change like fonts. You can add titles. You can
Mm-hmm.
change colors, backgrounds, add grids, take away grids, and every chart type that's back here. So bar charts and pie charts and everything else, tables. They're also a chart. Each individual type of chart has its own style settings.
Correct.
Okay, perfect.
Exactly. And that's where you can get really creative with them. If, for example, if you wanted to just kind of have a main place for all of your colors to go, what you can do, I just clicked off of everything. So I'm not selected any of these elements. And so I came back to the default layout and theme. So I jump over to the theme. And if I wanted to make sure that going forward, any new chart that I create would have our branded color, I would come in here and do that. So the tables will change the default, but the pie charts do not. And that's just an extra step, but that's fine. We can come through here and we can change whatever colors we want through here as well. And so again, we could come with our little color picker. I want to say I want this color now. So I want to grab that. I'll push that back over, and I'm like, well, I want my next color to be this one. And show that again a little bit slower. So basically what I did, I click on it. I say I want to do it a custom. And then let's say I want that color to be mine. And so I just kind of start pushing things around to be in whatever order that I want them to be in. And so this is where also, again, where you can change your different fonts, your default fonts. If I want my primary color, which your primary color is actually going to change your background color. So there you go, which obviously is going to make all that gray and black text a little bit harder to read. But if you needed a darker image in the background, that's how you would change that. Or if you wanted any different color to be your background, that's how you would do that.
Okay, so just to recap, so this layout theme while you're switching that back. So the layout and theme, when you see this on your right hand side when you're editing a report, it's the layout of the report overall. It's the theme colors that are sort of global to the report overall.
Mm-hmm.
Then each individual chart has its own style settings where you can make the chart look however it wants to look like. So theoretically, you could have done a dark color and then changed the text to be, instead of
Mm-hmm.
gray, to have it be like white or something like that. So it was easily readable.
Exactly,
Perfect.
exactly. And the pie charts are a little bit unique as well because there's quite a few different changes you can make to the pie chart. I mean, like there's all kinds of different things you can do to the pie chart with your where your labels are going to be, and you can change where our colors. See, now we have our colors that we just changed are
Hmm.
here, or you can change it where it's a single color or anything. There's lots
That's
of
cool.
different things you
It's a lot to play back here, which is nice because have like you can see very quickly you can make these massive changes in terms of style, but it's just like a few clicks.
Yep,
So
absolutely.
it's kind of deceptive. What if I wanted to see, because I don't know, like if I was actually, and I obviously this is not built to really use in the real world, but let's pretend for a second that it was. But I wanted to adjust date ranges and like how do I know what date ranges it is and all that?
Yes. That would be one of our filters we have up here. So if I click on this guy, and when I all I did was click, and now it's having me place it somewhere. I perhaps like to just put it into the top right hand corner just because that's just where my brain goes to look for the date ranges. And so right here is saying select a date range, and by having the select, so as we work with any tool, the information is over here on the right. As we select our date range, it's the same thing. We have a style and we have our data. And so we're going to auto select the date range. When I'm building a report, here's another pro tip for you. When I'm building the report, I always set it for the last 7 days, because if you are familiar enough with the data, and as you are building the report, if there's something coming through incorrectly, like maybe you did a formula wrong or something, or you're not grabbing the data that you think you're grabbing, it should come out at you really easily. Like you're going to spot it really fast, as opposed to doing a month-long date range or 6-month long date range, where it's going to be really hard to spot if the data is incorrect or not. So
So
that's
does that mean if I was using this report that I'm stuck with just the 7 days? Like how if you were
no.
because you're building this off kind of on the side, and let's pretend that you're building this for me to ultimately use.
Okay.
So what would it look like on my end?
So if I were building this for you, this is what it would look like for you. I'm going to jump into the view mode right here. And so this is what it would look like for you. And so you would also be able to change the dates, however. And another fun thing is Mercer's changing the dates on his end. It's not changing the dates on my end, which makes it an even more collaborative tool. So I don't have to worry that one
Let's
executive.
actually change some dates there so we can
Okay,
kind of see that
sure,
work.
absolutely. So we don't have to worry about executive A changing information and interfering with executive B
So
looking at the
numerous
same.
people can be using this report, viewing it at the same time, making changes to date ranges to see stuff, but it's not affecting everybody else that's
Exactly.
watching it, which is great. And I can see all the data changed based on
Yes,
that date range. Okay, great.
absolutely. Yes. And so we're going to go back into our edit mode so we can see what's happening here. So this is our date range formula. So again, my pro tip is while you're building it, do it for the last 7 days. Then once you kind of have your report built, then you go back to whatever it is that your client or the end user wants. I have some clients where it's they want to see last month. So we have a meeting first thing in the month, and so they want to see the last month's data when we have our meeting the first week.
So
So
this
that's
works to be the default range, but then you can also always adjust it if you wanted to kind of override it.
absolutely
Okay. What about if I wanted to do like, I wanted to see just my Facebook traffic or just my Infusionsoft traffic?
perfect. So that would be a filter control. And this is another one. I click on it, I drag and drop and place it wherever I want it to be. And again, default, it's saying medium. And so this is another spot where if you would want to be familiar enough to know where your data is coming from, and how your data is stored so you can know where to get your data. So for Facebook traffic, I know we tag our Facebook traffic as, and it's in the source. And actually, I'm going to look for Infusionsoft traffic because I think we'll have a little bit more in that one. So we have our source, and we're going to go back into our view mode. And now we can use this filter to say, I only want to see Infusionsoft traffic.
And so really quickly, so do I have to see it with that whole? Oh, okay. So I click off of it. Now I'm seeing just Infusionsoft traffic, and if I scroll down, are all of these reports now showing
Yes,
just Infusionsoft?
absolutely.
Okay, great. So now I can
Absolutely.
see my age of Infusionsoft users. I can see my devices in Infusionsoft, and if we flip it to another traffic source,
Mhm. And let's say we want to see Facebook.
Google's fine, yeah, or Facebook, yeah. So we got Facebook, and then so now Facebook, and again, I can't see anything else, but okay. So we always have to click off of it to get it to minimize,
Correct.
and then if I scroll down, the devices you see it switched a lot, right? Definitely more mobile
Mhm.
on Facebook than desktop, which is
Absolutely.
useful. That's kind of what we were thinking. We're going to
Yep.
match our forecast anyway. Okay, great.
And you can, so you should be able to select more than one if you needed to. For example, if you had more than one paid type of traffic, you can select everything that you were looking for.
And this is my
And
favorite part of Data Studio because it's so interactive that I can create these, or you in this case would create these little shell charts, and then you put in these little filters where I can say, and the cool thing is you can do multiple filters, right? I could do a source and a medium and a device category,
yes,
and filter. So you can have multiple filters here. So not just source, but I could have source, I could have medium, I could have device category, and really drill down into kind of what's going on with this report, which is fascinating. Like I love that. What about like putting our logo in, things like that.
so that is going to be when we have an image and we want to input put an image somewhere. So right here, I'm just going to drag and drop again, just my personal preference. I like to put in the top left-hand corner. And we're going to select a file. No clue what's going to pop up over here. Hey, look, Christmas pictures from my family. That's all right. Um, and we are going to find our logo, and then we're going to put our logo here. There it is. We
So this is
have
just like a basic, like whatever image. Does it matter if it's
it.
JPEG or PNG, or does it take both of them?
It does take both of them. And the last I checked was a few months ago. We did a PNG, but it does take both of them. And you can obviously you could see you can change the aspect
Mm-hmm.
ratio in your style. You're a little bit limited to what you can do with your style, but also very helpful when you possibly need to change it to match. Like for instance, if my background was all black, and we do have those clients who have a little bit more of that branded look and the more elegant luxury look, and having a black background all across made it look really nice for them. So again, just all about the elements of design here. So I'm going to change this back, and then one thing we have not covered just yet. So we have our logo, we have our different filters. We're able to change it by date. We're able to see the information. We've talked about how to kind of make it guide the user by showing our questions. Then we want to know how can we kind of display the information and make it even easier for the user to read. And that could be with different shapes or different rectangles or anything like that. The circle's the shape. What one of the favorite things that I like to do, actually, I'm going to click here. I'm going to make another text box. And what we're going to have is, I'm going to say this is going to be the ABC funnel and whatever you're going to call it. And I like to have it come all the way across. And again, this is just to make it look complete. Like we're going to have different sections of the report, and we're just going to color it whatever color that we want to choose. We're going to make the font a little bit bigger. And again, I understand people are like, oh, of course, all that stuff's easy. But I tell you, this is what the stuff that's going to bring your report to the next level, because it's going to make it so much easier for the user to read. And when the report is easier to read, the user is actually going to use it. So we have our ABC funnel here. Now I can copy and paste that and go to the next section and say, hey, now we're going to be at the XYZ funnel. And so they can have, obviously, we would move these things down, but then we would have another funnel. And so it's really easy for the user to get to the information that they're looking for just by glancing, like, oh, I don't care about the ABC funnel. I want to know the XYZ funnel real quick. And another fun thing, so what happens when we run out of room? Do we have to go to another page? Are we done? Do we have to squeeze everything, make everything smaller? No, you do not. What you come to is I clicked off of everything. I'm now back at layout and theme. I'm on the layout section, and this is where canvas size. So you can choose any one of these defaults, or just play with this down here and say, well, I want to go to 1200 instead of just 900. And it changes it for all of the different pages that you have. So right now we only have one page, but if we have 10 pages, it would change it for
And how
all
would
10.
you? So when you say pages, what is that?
So we have a only one page here. So if I wanted to add another one, so I can say add a page, and it automatically jumps us to two.
So now
So
you've got a nice blank page. And is it always the same sizes? Like if you changed the size on page one, does that mean all the pages?
great question. So yes, because we are working on the layout and theme of the entire report, it does change
It's
for
global.
the entire report.
Awesome. Okay,
And
so
so that
if we wanted to share this now, like let's say this was done, we flip back to page one and we wanted to share this report now.
hmm So what
Um,
you could do
mhm.
um, is you can just click on this button right here to share the report. And you can change, obviously, it's like any other Google. You can say they have access to view only, to edit, whatnot. That's the same
So
thing
this
you
works
would.
just like Google Drive, like Google Docs, Google Sheets.
Mhm.
If you've ever shared with anything,
Exactly.
it's the exact same thing. You can have somebody be an editor of the report, or they can be a view only of the report. So if you were sharing this
Yeah,
with a client, it would be a view only, so they can't accidentally delete something out of it or something like that. And if you're
correct.
an agency and you're doing traffic for somebody, that's what you would do. So you set them up as whatever their Google account is, make them view only, and then they're off to the races.
Exactly.
Perfect.
The one thing that I do want to mention, if you do have more than one person in your team going through and editing the report, you do need to make sure that the other person on your team can edit your data source and you want to share that data source with them. So I'm going to go back to our main data studio section. This is datastudio.google.com. And then I'm going to jump to data sources. So um, I would come over here to our little dots and then I would share the data source and then go through the same process. And the
And
reason
I would
for
have to
that,
do that for clients too.
no, if you don't want your client editing the data source, you would not have to do this. But if you have a team member on it that like maybe you get it started and you want them to go through and finish it up and they need access to the data source, then you would need to share this data source for
Gotcha. And
to
that's
them.
only really something with a team. So,
Correct.
but if you're
Yeah.
doing it by yourself, that's probably not something you'll run into, which is
No.
great. So let's go back to page one. Like, how do I go back to that? I feel like we
So
lost it.
you
Okay.
could just click up here and
Yep.
do this, and that's one way to do it. I want to show another quick thing for the view because this is one of our favorites. So right now I went to the view mode, and to get to the first page, I have to actually click back on the arrow. So that isn't always great because if you have 20 different pages, you want to be able to see that and have that option so you don't have to constantly click down on the arrow. So in order to see a left-hand nav, you're going to go back to your layout and theme, and you're going to click on left. And I swear this is not intuitive at all. We just happened upon this thing right here. And so now we're going to go back to our view, and now we can
Oh, that's
have
cool.
our pages here. And of course, we can just pop it back as it gets out of the way, or
And
come
this
back.
is what the client would see, or
Yes,
whoever's
this is.
seeing it. So that's how they can navigate very quickly.
Mhm.
And then I assume there's ways to name the pages so they don't just say page one, page
Yes,
two,
we
and
can
all
jump
that.
into
Okay.
that. And the reason you would want to do that because we've before we found this, um, the client would only see page one and they wouldn't realize that there were other pages. It wasn't obvious for them to change the pages. So if we wanted to rename it, we just say this is an awesome page. And so now we go back into view. There we go.
Love it. And then what? So let's go back to those templates, and we'll finish it out here. So if somebody's trying to learn this tool, because I mean I think this is a really good sort of overview of all the different buttons and dials and levers.
Mhm.
But in terms of like actually learning how to do this, like how can you use templates to do that?
All right. So, going back to all of our different templates, I definitely recommend that the user would go through the tutorial just because it's going to show you all of the other elements that we did not cover. Then you can come through and the different templates and see, like, first of all, you're going to want to come with your questions. Like, you want to know what you're trying to get to because it could guide you thinking, oh, a pie chart would be really great to display XYZ. And so you can kind of get inspiration of the different ways to do pie charts or the different ways to do tables. So you do want to kind of come to this with a little bit of the end in mind. And for us, a really big inspiration was with this YouTube one. And so I'm going to actually use this template, and then someone show you what happens when you use the template. It's going to say select a data source. And so I want to use the same sample one. So I'm going to type in the word sample, and I'm going to say sample YouTube data. And I'm going to copy the report. And again, we don't recommend you always copying the report because dashboards should be really unique to what questions you're asking. And so, oh, there we go. I just need to refresh it. Anyways, so the point I was trying to get to is this one really inspired us because it had these little things over next to it that kind of guided your eye. I'm guessing I don't have access to that part of the data source anymore. All right, so what I was trying to point out is these. Like you can see views, time on page, and this little guy, and these little guys. Like this was just really, really easy to guide the user what was happening.
So
And
what
so
what is happening? Yeah. How
it's
do we
just
get those?
it's just an image. That's all these little guys are is just an image.
Oh,
And so
gotcha. And you can
if
tell that how?
I can tell that how by when I click on them, it's an image file. And
Because
so
you
it
just see image file on the right hand side.
mhm.
Gotcha. Okay.
Are you yeah, and that's exactly how this report is doing it. Then I went to this population report here as well, and I think I already have a copy of it, so I'm not going to copy it again. But what this one is, we're going to jump into the edit mode. This one, again, thinking like these are like really neat looking. This is a chart, and this other part, I'm going to try to select it. This, guess what this is?
It looks like a
It's this,
circle based on
it,
looking on the right hand side. Okay. So that shows me it's
it's,
a circle and it shows me how they did it
mm-hmm,
to make
and
it
right
kind of
here,
look like they did.
and it has a gradient. See, this is exactly how we could figure out. Okay, so they all they did was make a circle. They have a gradient on it, and so and we could even come to the theme in their layout and see exactly what they did. Let's see what their theme was. Okay, obviously it looks black. What is this part up here? What did they do here? And oh,
So
it's
that's just the
just
text box, and then these are the stylings for the text box. This is
this
just a
is just the
rectangle. Okay, I
yep.
gotcha. So you're
And
just sort of
then
clicking on different elements to say like, here's how they did it,
mm-hmm,
and the right hand side will always identify what the thing is they did. So how did they do like the rounded corners of the table there?
that was again. We're gonna wait for it to collect. All right, so we are now so we're at our data and we're seeing how they got their data with that, and then we go to our style. And we're gonna scroll down until we find something that kind of makes sense of how they did that, and it's going to be right here, background and border, and they actually just changed their border radius to 10. So if I were to change this to 25, it'd be really rounded. So I click off of that. So there you go. So that's what would be a 25. So
Oh,
that's how
interesting.
they adjusted that. And how did they get this little earth down here? That looked really cool. Was it that's just another image.
So you
Like
could
I could
move that around. Oh, there you go. Perfect.
see.
Yeah.
So even though the report looks super impressive and super complicated, like if I had access to all of these, it would probably take maybe 10 minutes to do this. Like once you just, if you just copy and paste the text right here, it's be so fast. This right here, what is this? This is,
Images. Yeah.
yeah, well, yeah, it's just
Just an image. That's great.
yep, another image. And so image and text. And so they actually really only have 6 charts on here. So it's a map, it's a map, it's a map, a chart, a bar chart, and another different type of chart down here. So um,
That's
looks
really great.
complicated, but it's really simple.
Yeah. So a lot of this is really just using the templates for inspiration of terms like, oh, I wonder how they made this happen, or what is how do they make it look like this one thing, and that's pretty much how you're using templates is for that sort of inspiration. Again, going back to your point that templates, other people's templates were created to answer their questions, not necessarily ours, but we
Correct.
can learn off of them to say, hey, this gradient thing, that's really cool. Like let's do that. So that's really awesome. All right, great. Any other kind of last minute things on Tag Manager? I guess when somebody's just starting out, right, which is really focused on people that are beginning and just sort of getting started, what would you say are the next steps that they should take after watching this workshop?
The next step they should take is absolutely 100% is to just get in there, connect into their analytics, and start playing with the data. and just kind of see what is possible. And, like I said, I came to it kicking and screaming. It was probably like the second or third time where I really got into it and had to make a dashboard that I finally realized, like, oh my gosh, this really is so much easier. Because I always thought, oh no, spreadsheets are going to be faster. I could get that with a spreadsheet, but no, it does go, and it just makes it look so much cleaner for the clients.
Outstanding. Cool. Well, so that's really what it comes down to, is just going to datastudio.google.com, jumping into this tool, playing around with it. And of course, that's what the instructors are back there for at measurementmarketing.io. So Julie's back there, I'm back there. So if you have questions over, a particular dashboard, it's definitely the way to go to ask us there. So again, Julie, appreciate your time, effort, and energy with this, and thanks for sharing your expertise.
Thanks for having me.
Not a problem. And of course, at this point, you got to think, okay, in the workshops, we always say, okay, what was your one thing? Was it just the idea that Data Studio even exists? Maybe you are used to spreadsheets like Julie was, and you want to, you don't really want to look to moving those, but maybe you're convinced, like, okay, Data Studio might be a little better. Maybe it's just, okay, I know Data Studio's existed, but I've never had a reason to get into it, and this is it. Or maybe you've learned some new things about page navigation, colors, right? The idea of some style tips, things along those lines. So hopefully you got at least one new thing. But remember, we covered a lot. So just take one concept, one new thing, even if it's just, okay, Data Studio exists, I'm going to open an account. Do that, then come back, rewatch this workshop, follow along, and pick up another new skill. Now, speaking of, we do have lots of individual win courses, including one on Google Data Studio, amongst countless others. So measure.tips/courses will take you there. So if you are interested in getting a really more of a deep dive onto these, this is where I would recommend that you go to next, especially if you're kind of by yourself or as a freelancer. Now, if you are part of a team, maybe you have an agency, measure.tips/start, I would recommend Measurement Marketing Academy. It includes all of the Win courses, including Win Google Data Studio, but it also has substantially more. All the workshops are back there. You can ask questions. We've got instructor office hours with Academy office hours back there. You've got Toolbox with all the resources. There's a ton back there. And it is made for teams. In fact, it comes with 4 logins. So not only you can be back there, but also maybe you've got somebody else who does more of the strategy things on your end, or somebody else does more implementation. Maybe you've got a vendor you want to share a login with. You can do that as well once you create your Academy account. Of course, if you are already an Academy member, every Wednesday, 3:30 p.m. Eastern, we do have Measurement Marketing Academy's office hours for our member Q&A. So we look forward to seeing you there. Just make sure you check your emails. Those links have already been sent out. And of course, they are already in your members area as well. Next week's Workshop Wednesday topic, we switch it to Beyond the Basics. This is where we sort of level up things a little bit. And we talk to those who have a little bit more experience. We're going to be talking about using custom templates in Google Tag Manager. It's actually a relatively new thing that has come out for Google Tag Manager. So I'm pretty excited about that. And we're going to be using that with Facebook pixels. So for those of you that are doing Facebook, custom templates might be a pretty useful thing for you. So we'll show you how to use that with Google Tag Manager. Speaking of, if you are not yet a part of Workshop Wednesday, we don't make all of these workshops publicly available. So if you happen to see this one out there, just because we chose to make it public, we don't make all of them public though. But Workshop Wednesday members get access to all of them, and it is currently free. So measure.tips/WW, if you want to make sure that you've got access to every single Workshop Wednesday that comes out each and every week, that is what you want to go to. So again, measure.tips/WW to join Workshop Wednesday, which at this point is currently free. So make sure you take advantage. And with that, we will go ahead and bring it to a close. This has been Getting Started, Google Data Studio 101, Getting Started with Google Data Studio. Thanks again for watching this workshop, and we will see you on the next one. Take care.